Hello and welcome to the Henley Partners Global Mobility Report webcast series. I'm Juliette Foster and I'm delighted to be your host and moderator for this prestigious series of exclusive interviews with leading international academics and professional experts on the major and emerging trends in global and regional mobility. Grounded in geopolitical analysis and with a focus on the realities shaping our world, from Covid-19 to climate change to economic downturn and ongoing conflict, the Global Mobility Report series offers exclusive insight into mobility and migration patterns and looks at what we can expect in the months to come. Well, joining me today to discuss the impact of Covid-19 and the future of global mobility is Dr. Parag Khanna. Now, he's a leading global strategy advisor, world traveller and best-selling author. He's founder and managing partner of FutureMap, which is a data and scenario-based strategic advisory firm that's based in Singapore. And Dr. Khanna is also a member of the Henley Partners Advisory Board. So welcome, Parag.
Juliette, great to see you.
It's good to see you too. Now, look, we're talking about COVID-19. Is it fair to say that it is a reset for migration? And how do you think it's playing into some of the other factors that are actually causing people to move?
Oh, there's no question that it is a tremendous reset. In fact, it's a reset the likes of which no one can recall in recorded memory, because we had that brief period in the spring of 2020 in which truly all borders were effectively closed. And not only were borders closed, but to the extent that people were moving, it was a reset back home. People were going back to their country of origin, their country of nationality. And we witnessed those large-scale movements, particularly, as you recall, South Asian workers from the Gulf countries going back to India, Europeans going from America back to Europe, or from Asia back to Europe, and Asians within Asia moving back to their home country, and so on and so forth. So it truly was a reset. However, the factors that drive people to move, to choose to relocate, to live in other places, those factors are very much still present. So what I expect is after this reset, everyone gets moving again.
Let's stay with that thought, because you've written a paper about this very subject, and I want to quote part of it back at you, so to speak. But I mean, you've actually said, and I quote, "Nationality will not suffice to guarantee safe passage." What I want you to do is to explain to me what that means, both within and indeed beyond the passport index.
Indeed. Well, within the index, we saw how hard-earned gains or long-established status of given passports, and United States, to take an example, can drop very quickly in light of the perceived handling of COVID, the infection rate in the country, the medical system, and whether or not adequate preparations are taken for people to travel and information sharing between countries. Now, a lot of that, sort of diminution of a country's status occurred in the spur of the moment, right? Or in a mutually recriminatory kind of way because of suspicions and so forth. And now we expect, obviously, that many countries will bounce back roughly to where they were. However, will the incumbent kind of power or authority that passports used to have maintain themselves into the future in the post-COVID world if those countries have not or did not perform well in managing COVID? I would say no. In other words, to put a bumper sticker on it, Juliette, we're moving into something more of a passport meritocracy, in which countries will have to demonstrate, in a way, the performance of that state in protecting people's health in order to guarantee the mobility of people with that nationality.
An interesting idea as well, because the COVID narrative itself, it is moving on. It looked at the cause of the virus, the mortality rates associated with it. And now, of course, the next chapter is the vaccination. So when do you think that the vaccinations will be globally deployed? And do you think that perhaps movement will be specifically entrenched at regional level? And at the same time, how much of that is going to be driven by the politics of the story?
Oh, I think those are great questions, Juliette, and they're quite interrelated in that there is in effect a certain gravity to travel in any case, and that is really going to be entrenched by the COVID effect, which is to say that most migration is technically regional or intra-regional. And that's certainly going to be reinforced by COVID, and countries will incrementally work to reduce travel frictions and restrictions at borders within regions, within Africa, within South America, within North America, within Europe, and so on and so forth. So I expect that largely it's going to be a regional phenomenon moving forward rather than a simultaneous global opening. And therefore, there's a real parallel between what we're describing in terms of the restoration of mobility and also vaccine deployment. Because as with anything that relates to technology or wealth distribution, these things also follow a certain kind of gravity in which some regions move faster than others.
Now, interestingly, you advocate for mobility to become more merit-based, and that puts you on the same page, I guess, as the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, because he's pushing for this for the United Kingdom. Does that mean that the country is on the right tracks in terms of approaching this issue?
Well, I think that there have been quite a few missteps along the way. We don't need to exhume everything related to Brexit in this conversation, but I believe that migration should always be done in this kind of fashion. It's not beyond the realm of any Western government, certainly not the United Kingdom, to quantify and to know what skills it needs, how many people it needs, where it needs them, and so forth. And so what Boris Johnson is now doing is saying that this is going to be our approach. It's going to be colorblind, geography blind, and need-based and skills-based. And I think that's a good step towards the kind of post-Brexit recovery on the issue of migration, because the UK is fundamentally a very desirable destination, and the politics more generally and the politics of migration, getting that right is going to be part of that restoration.
Okay, so let's be a bit more specific then. How do you see these factors boosting the appeal of investment migration?
Well, there's no question that if people feel that they can no longer be so seamlessly mobile around the world between any number of destinations, but have to choose from a smaller number, one or two, let's say, to spend extended periods of time, they're more likely to focus their energies on making a judicious choice from among their options and choosing their residency or their citizenship based upon the places that they feel are going to be the most comfortable, the most safe, obviously, and so forth. And there's a whole host of other measures, obviously, beyond COVID, the changes that are occurring in tax policy, for example, and so forth. So there is a global marketplace, a very competitive marketplace around investment, migration, and residency. And I think that the ways in which countries are now upping their game in terms of lowering restrictions for people to come, making it easier for them to establish and maintain residency there, giving those guarantees, if you will, of quality of life, low tax and so forth. These are the kinds of things that are going to play a much more prominent role moving forward.
Right, so effectively it's offering up more choice. And given that, which countries or indeed continents are attracting those second passport applications? And does the data that we have so far reveal how many nationals are choosing to relocate?
It might be a little soon to draw definitive long-term conclusions. Again, there are many drivers of migration. We have seen British nationals exiting the UK. We could very well see them return within a decade for a whole host of reasons related to the country's reforms around the ease of doing business, the lessons that may be learned for the health sector, climate change, for example, as well. We've seen Canada already be a very attractive destination for migrants, and it's certainly going to be more so because of its relative handling of COVID, versus the United States, as well as, of course, I don't want to say positive impact of climate change, but it is a more climate resilient country than most others in the world. Then there are these islands of stability, New Zealand, Singapore, places that managed COVID very well that also have various kinds of investor residency and migration schemes. So again, pockets of excellence will attract people wherever they may be in the world, but not just because of COVID.
And Parag, a final thought here, because I know that you're also fascinated by technology. As the pandemic has been a great reset, as we established at the beginning of our conversation, what role do you think technology will have in facilitating the future of mobility? Very briefly.
A very, very important role. It's already been part of the dialogue around how to ease border restrictions and streamline regulations and requirements on data provision. Now, moving forward, it could be that we will want to have some kind of biometric identification just around our health certification. This may need to be on the blockchain so that we don't have to pretend that everyone's paper documents are real and verifiable. So I can see the silver lining on this from a technology standpoint. And hopefully, Juliette, we can both pray for the good of the world that we use those technologies available to us to enable mobility for everyone who needs it and deserves it.
A sound note on which to end. But thank you to Dr. Khanna for sharing your valuable insights on the impact of COVID-19 and indeed the future of global mobility. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Likewise, Juliette. Thank you.
Thank you too as well to our global online audience for your engagement and indeed your participation in the Henley and Partners Global Mobility Report series.